Now.
The Radio Wemo Breakfast.
Well, stepping in for Russell Norman this week and next, it's the other Green Party co-leader, Metiria Turei, joining us this morning. Good morning to you, Metiria.
Kia ora. How are you doing?
Very well. Are you in Christchurch still at the moment?
No, I'm back in Wellington. The house is sitting.
Of course.
And we did the foreshore. We're doing the foreshore this week. So
that's right. But you have been hanging out with the student army, is that right?
Yeah. So I spent about 5 days over the last week in Christchurch, and we did shoveling with the army on the first day, and then we've been doing a lot of working with them on the welfare drops, on door knocking and delivering food and that sort of thing. We've got a team of Green MPs there doing that, Green MPs and Green volunteers doing it.
And you've been shoveling a lot of that silt. Has that had any health effects that you can see so far?
Well, not so far, but I mean, I understand it's a mixture of, sand and water and poo. I can't expect it's particularly healthy. But I think the worst thing is when it dries up and becomes dusty, like it didn't later in the week.
Yeah.
So I was shoveling when it was still quite wet, and it was easier to move and not quite so difficult to manage. But later in the week, when you're doing door knocking around it, I am quite worried about that. But it's hard to tell. I don't really know.
Yeah, I guess we won't know about some of these things further down the track. Also, like where people in Christchurch and those affected eastern suburbs are going to live. Now, the Prime Minister yesterday was being fast and loose with his figures. He put out 10,000 of unlivable houses. Civil Defence later came back and said, I don't know where you got that figure from. But it's bound to be significant. And one thing that the Prime Minister did say is that he's quite keen on perhaps some extra suburbs somewhere outside of Christchurch, the main central city there, and perhaps continuing the sprawl. Yeah,
back up towards the hills. First, he should not be fast and loose. Like the Prime Minister shouldn't be going out being alarmist about these things. It's really bad, and it freaks people out, and they're already freaked out enough down there.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just really bad behaviour on his part, I think. But where they decide to build, they're going to have to be careful, because the whole of the Canterbury Plain is built on that kind of land. So they're going to have these issues no matter where they build, and they're going to be very careful that communities make decisions for themselves as well. I'm extremely worried that the government will make all of these decisions themselves about where people should live, without consulting the people who are affected.
Yeah.
And they live there for reasons, it's housing, it's affordable, it's close to other people that they care about, it's close to their work or their schools. You can't just move people out of the places where they live like that without them being committed to doing it. And I think he's got some real structural problems here, and has to be very careful that they make the decision, not him.
And I guess at the moment it is early days, but wouldn't you say that there needs to be an overall city plan for this, and really decide, okay, so if we're going to put this extra housing in here, how's the public transport going to work? Yep. Is work going to be close to the suburbs? In times of oil crisis in the future, is this going to work out?
Yeah, that's right. And I know some organisations, like I understand Naita, who have been working on a big business development park place somewhere in Canterbury, and that they may speed up that process. So then you could look at housing around there, look at public transport, you could even start looking at light rail as well as busways and things to make sure that people could get to where they need to go. So there is that chance for real city planning. I don't have a lot of faith that this government understands what they really mean, and I think Christchurch people need to be supported to say that that's what they want.
Absolutely.
But it does happen. Yeah.
Last week we were talking with Russell about how we're going to pay as a country for this disaster. Has there been any support and traction gained for the idea of a levy?
Well, we tackled the Minister of Finance on it yesterday in questions. And he had no genuine argument as to why it wasn't a good idea, except that ideologically they're opposed. I mean, that's what it came down to. So I think there's still room. So then they're trying not to budge on it, but I think there's still room for putting pressure on them about it. And it's going to come down to, it does come down to the question of who should pay. And if he's going to cut services, increase debt and cut services, then it's going to be those really vulnerable families around the country who will end up paying, whether it's through working for families cuts or whether it's student allowances or whatever they want to do, it'll be the vulnerable families that pay. So as long as we keep putting the pressure on him, I think they have no choice. Because we say there's three things. Have a levy on those who can afford it to raise a little bit more revenue, do a little bit more borrowing for the short and medium term costs, and move your infrastructure spending. So they don't need to spend $10 billion on motorways, highway holidays in the north.
Yeah.
They could move some of that down to Christchurch where it's needed.
Yeah.
That's a kind of rational economic solution. They aren't committed to a rational economic solution like you.
And just finally, Metiria, did you, unlike Hone Harawira, did you remember to vote on the foreshore bill?
Yeah, we did. And it seems to happen to every first-time independent MP that they forget to vote on these things. But so Gordon Copeland did it with Section 59 bill, but he forgot to vote on the third reading, which was a bit more embarrassing.
I do like Hone's response to the media. It was, "Oh, gee, I'm dumb." Typical Hone style.
It is. You better watch out though, because people won't, his voters won't put up with it for very long. So he's got the chance to redeem himself. So.
Indeed. All right, Metiria, Turei, thanks very much for your time.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's now 17 minutes past 8 here on